But I want to address two really important points, right? And this will be like the last kind of question I've got for you. But it's a two-part question, okay? Because something you keep saying is "Zarurat ijad ki maa hai." What that means is necessity is the mother of all invention. My mum used to say that to me as well as a child, right? So the two-part question I've got for you is, one is, yes, you're right, necessity is the mother of invention. Necessity is always there. But you see, what I feel is like you've got this element where you make that necessity your necessity. Because everyone else in the world sees the necessity, but you're like, this is a necessity and I've got to do something about it. So I want you to understand, like, what's the mindset that makes you do that rather than just leaving it to everyone else like everyone else does. And for me, like, this is the kind of thing that I see when I think about leadership. And so that's one part of the question, really understanding your psychology and your thinking of why do you have to make this your thing as opposed to just letting someone else get on with it. And the second one I wanted to ask you about is just generally around leadership and how, you know, we have kind of, it feels like a contradictory relationship in Islam with leadership, where on one hand we're like, don't go for leadership, don't put yourself forward for leadership, and on the other hand the Prophet is saying every one of you is a leader. So these two things I really want to kind of you to address in the last kind of question and answer. That would be really great.
Okay, and I should say that a good bit, maybe about 50% of what you were just saying in the last few minutes, I wasn't able to hear.
Okay.
The connection somehow got stuck, so I missed out. But I got the gist of what you're getting at. You know, one, why the necessity became a necessity for me personally.
Yes.
Yeah. And the other one was what is it again now about?
The other one is about the contradiction.
Leadership.
The apparent contradiction.
You know, whether we should seek leadership or, as we have been told, we should leadership. You know, so where does whatever leadership things I was involved in fit in with that?
Yeah, and it's like trying to educate us.
So
on
I'll take the first one.
Yeah, exactly. Educate on us on the sense that, you know, when it comes to leadership, we shouldn't seek leadership. But then the Prophet is telling us, you know, every one of you is a shepherd. So the kind of the oxymoron between the two, I guess.
Okay, the first part, and that is why it became a necessity for me, because Allah made it a necessity for me. Because of the goal that I was seeking to achieve, a necessity came up for me to achieve that goal. So I had no choice. If I didn't take on the demands of this necessity, then the goal which I sought, I wouldn't be able to achieve. So it was relatively simple. It wasn't a matter that there was a necessity out there which was not necessarily connected to me. And then, you know, I took it upon myself. I said, let me go deal with that necessity, and let me go deal with this other one necessity. No. Every time Allah created that necessity and put me in that situation. You know, I wasn't a writer. I was an artist. I was into art. I was planning to go to art school, and, you know, I was very much into, you know, colors and drawings and, you know, this kind of thing. That's where I was. My head was not writing. But after graduating from Medina, I was asked to take over the teaching of Islamic studies in that school. There were no books at that time, 1980. There were no books on Islam that could teach you from, you know, now we have Molvi Abdulaziz, and, you know, we have the series from Riyadh, and they have a number of different books that are out there. Then there was nothing, absolute zero. So I had to write. That was the necessity. How am I going to teach without preparing things for the students? I had to. So, you know, Allah put me in that situation, but alhamdulillah, He also put the means to fulfill it there too. Because my father was an English expert, you know, masters in English, and, you know, having taught English for 30, 40 years, whatever. You know, so he was a guide for me, you know. Even when I tell people my book, The Evolution of Fiqh, the last chapter was written by my father.
Wow. Okay, I didn't know that.
as
I
a
love it.
non-Muslim.
Okay, amazing.
As a non-Muslim. He accepted Islam later, but at the time when he did it, he was a non-Muslim.
Amazing.
He was helping me edit the book and, prepare it for publication. And he wrote that last chapter for me. I mentioned it in the introduction. Most people don't read the
Yeah.
introductions. So maybe why you don't know. But I mentioned it, right? But that was, because I was still in the process of learning how to write.
Okay.
I wasn't a writer, as I said. I didn't have that inclination, I took notes, copious notes. I can say, so as a note taker, yeah. When I first became a Muslim, every book that I read, I used to write the summary of all of the ideas of those books. So if I wanted to go back over, I didn't have to go read the whole book again. I could just go back to the main key and critical concepts which were in the book. So I was in the habit of doing that, note taking. But writing per se, no. So that circumstance forced me, and there were no books available on Aqidah.
Yeah.
The only thing was, Kitab al-Tawheed, which was a training book used by Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab for training his teachers, giving them the course material that they would deliver. It wasn't meant to be a book to be studied by itself.
Yeah.
That's why you have all the commentaries on it. And that's what we studied. But there was nothing, no commentaries available in English. So that book by itself is just like, who reads it? Who read it? Maybe you read a few pages. There was nothing. So this is why I felt the necessity of writing, for example, the fundamentals of Tawheed. Because there was nothing with that commentary type approach. So it's in the same way, each of the necessities came up for me, which required me to act on. Whether it was in dawah, I knew there was an aspect of the dawah where there was a weakness, there was a shortage, no books, so and so. I felt it was my duty to provide that information for English speakers, etc. So that was the necessity in front of me. If the dawah was to move forward effectively, we needed to have that. If the college was to be set up, we needed to have textbooks.
Yeah.
So I wrote on usul al-fiqh, usul al-hadith, usul al-tafsir, etc., because these would be the core books which the students would initially study when they went into the systems.
Amazing.
So, as I said, these were necessities which Allah put in front of me, which I had to tackle if I wanted to achieve the goals that I had set, for myself, for effectively conveying that responsibility which the Prophet ﷺ put on each and every one of us when he said, "Ballighu anni walau ayah," convey whatever you've learned, even if it's only a single verse.